Hi, I'm Paige, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this half circle skirt. This tutorial is very in-depth and it takes you through each and every step for achieving a really high quality, beautifully made half circle skirt. So this skirt has a bias waistband and it has an invisible zipper. At the top of the zipper is this little flap that has the hook, so it just flaps like this, and then you undo the zipper. Instead of zipping all the way up to the top, I think this gives it a really nice finished look. It is also fully lined, and it's great to line the skirt if you have something that is lightweight, slightly see-through, or if you just want something that feels really soft. Down in the description box below, you'll find a link to a worksheet that takes you through some of the math for the skirt and also helps you in finding how much fabric you need to buy and what lengths. You can also do a tulle skirt with this same tutorial. You just have to treat the top layers of tulle as the main fabric. For this skirt, I used 6 layers of tulle and just treated it as one. And I also added a velvet ribbon to the waistband to give it that cute velvet trim. Let's get right into the tutorial now. Okay, so before we begin cutting or measuring, you're going to get your fabric ready and pre-wash it or pre-treat it however your fabric is recommended to be treated, whether that's washing or steaming or dry cleaning. Then we're going to do the measurement. So we're going to be doing a half circle skirt, which looks like this. So for this, to calculate how far in you'll need to cut your quarter circle out of this, you're going to take your waist measurement and you're going to divide it by pi. Just put that in a calculator, it's very simple, and then you're going to round up to the nearest quarter inch. So for my skirt, I'm going to have a waistband of 28 inches, so divided by pi, it's something like 8.9, so I'm going to round up to 9. So my first measurement is going to be 9 inches. Right here we're making our waistband. So this fabric right here, this is the folded side and this is the open side. It's just a big piece of fabric folded in half this way. And because I'm working with a plaid and I want my plaid to match on my back seam, I'm going to line up my plaid. Right here you can see all of the lines of cream are lined up together. So the first measurement I'm going to do is I'm going to mark from the very point of this corner 9 inches, and I'll just chalk that out and I'll turn it and create a semicircle shape. You may not be able to see this on the camera, but it's chalked right here. And before I cut this, I'm going to double check my measurements. And now I'm going to measure the length of my skirt. The width of your fabric is going to really matter in this step. I can only have a length up to however long this piece is right here. I would like my skirt to be about 24 inches, so let's see what I can get out of it. So we're gonna start with our ruler at our chalk line and see 24 lands right here for me. So I have about 5 to 6 inches extra. So just in case I put this on and I think, ooh, I might want this longer, I'm gonna cut out a longer length than what I think I want. And I can always remove it later. So I've decided I'm going to cut 29 inches because that's what I have available. So what you're going to do now is you're going to add 9 inches to 29. That way you can make your measurements from this point again. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to mark 38 inches from this point all the way until I get to the fold. Now before I cut into this, I'm going to measure twice. The saying goes, measure twice, cut once. I'll begin cutting. Okay, so here is my piece of fabric, and if you just open it up like this, you'll see you have a complete half circle. Be careful as you're moving this around because this is all cut on the bias and you don't want it to stretch out. So just gently bring that waistband together and set it aside. So now I've got my lining all laid out in the same way. The fold is right here and the open edge is right here. And I'm going to cut it out the same way as the skirt, but I'm just going to shorten up the skirt a little bit so that none of the lining pokes out and is visible from the outside. Now we're going to take these over to our sewing machine and baste along the curved edge of the waist. Okay, so now over at my machine, I'm going to set my stitch length as high as it will go for a nice basting stitch. And I'm just going to put my fabric in and I'm going to baste it a 1/2 inch away from the side. As you're sewing, don't let this stretch out, just let it feed, let the machine feed it. Okay, and then you'll repeat that with the top curve of the waist. So here I've cut out the inner facing that's going to add a little bit of stiffness and no stretchiness to the waistband. And also in inner facing, I've cut out 2 long strips, and this is going to be used to just reinforce the zipper. So you want to cut these about 2 inches longer than the zipper. I decided to cut my waistband on the bias just because on the curve of the skirt there was this strip of bias that looked really nice. You could do it on grain as well. Because this is going to stretch, you're going to handle this very carefully and fuse it onto your inner facing. So this one's an iron-on, so I'm going to go take this to the iron and press it. So now that I've ironed a 1/2 inch all the way around the waistband, it is prepped and ready for sewing. And with the skirt, I took those little strips of inner facing and I put them on the wrong side of each side of the waistband. So here's the waistband curve, and then here are the sides where the zipper's gonna go. So this is the back seam, and I've just interfaced the inside of the fabric. So this would be the right side and the wrong side. And this is gonna stabilize for when we add the zipper. So I have my center back seam and my zipper, and I'm just gonna place some markings before I begin stitching and pinning. So right here at the top of the zipper is the zipper stop. This zipper stop I'm going to put right at 5/8 of an inch. So I'm just gonna mark that. So if I place my zipper stop right there on that marking, then I'm just gonna mark the end of the zipper. So I'm going to place a little marking right here, and that's going to tell me when I'm going to stop with my basting stitch. Now I'm going to get my pins, and I'm going to pin each time my color changes. By doing this elaborate pinning, it's going to make sure that your plaid stripes perfectly match every single time the entire length of the back. I'm going to begin with a basting stitch right here. So I'm going to set this to the longest stitch length I have, and I'll sew removing my pins as I go. And this is at 5/8 of an inch away. When I get to my marking that signifies the bottom of the zipper, I'm going to switch my stitch length back to my normal stitch, and I'm gonna go back and forth, create a very secure point, and then I'll just regularly stitch all the way down to the bottom. Here we have our invisible zipper, and when you get it, it looks like this, and it's nice and flat, and when you open it up, the directions say to iron the zipper. So what that means is this zipper tape is a little bit bent around the zipper, and if you pull the zipper out like this, hard to see, but it's just the matter of rolling the zipper out and pressing the zipper away from the zipper tape. And what will happen is when you zip it back up, instead of this being flat, it's gonna be up like that. That's how you know you did it right. We're gonna take our zipper, zipped up, and our skirt. I did the stitching and I ironed it nice and flat, and we're going to pin the zipper into place. So on this marking right here, that is where the top of our zipper is going to go. Right here, these zipper stops. We're gonna line up the top of the zipper with that marking, and then you're going to look, and there's a center line in the zipper, and you're gonna match it up with the center line where the basting stitches are, and you're going to pin it into place. Only pin through one layer. Each time that you place a pin, go ahead and double check now that is lined up. Do that all the way down to the very bottom of the zipper. And I'm going to get a thread of a contrasting color, and I'm going to hand baste this into place. And you're only going to baste through the seam allowance and the zipper tape, not the front of the skirt. Now you can see that this is basted, and once this is done, you're able to remove the basting stitches, go in with a seam ripper, and you can take them out. And then you're able to unzip your zipper and then you take this over to your machine to stitch it down with the machine along the sides. To sew the zipper down, you can use an invisible zipper foot or a zipper foot, or even something like this that I use for stitching right along piping. So I'll just switch out the foot, and now you just do a straight stitch right along the very, very edge. And once you get to the zipper, then you just back stitch and see how it's stitched right on the edge. Repeat the same thing to the other side. Now you can zip the zipper all the way back up to the top, and you can see that it is totally invisible. You only see it if you really pull at the fabric. And now where we weren't able to get to, we're gonna just finish up the stitching, the last part of the zipper on each side. So now that they're all stitched, you can remove your basting stitches. So if we turn this right side out, you can see that it's perfectly in place. The end of the zipper is right here, but it's just perfectly smooth. You can't even tell where it ends and where it begins. And right here, there's enough room left for when we attach the waistband. The last step before we add the lining is we're gonna finish the edge of our fabric. My fabric is on the selvage edge right here, so it won't unravel, but I'm just gonna add a zigzag stitch that just barely catches the top of the zipper so that they're anchored together, and I'm just gonna be sewing through the seam allowance. So now that we have our zipper installed, our seam allowance finished, we're gonna just repeat the steps similarly to the lining. Now I've already got the lining pretty much complete. What I did was I took my silk and I just put a little fold in it, and I did a small zigzag stitch right on the very edge, and it creates this really nice thin finish. Then I went in and I basted 9 inches, and then I stitched the rest and pressed it. And then I've started just taking out my basting stitches, so I'll complete that now. Okay, so we have this pressed edge right here in our opening. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this with the right side out, and we're gonna slip it over the skirt. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna line up the top right here, and you can pin this. Do the same to the other side. Then I'm gonna just pin all this in place, and I'm gonna hand stitch the lining to the seam allowance of the skirt below, but not all the way through to the other side. We only wanna catch into the seam allowance. This is what it looks like when you pin it into place. You just pin it away from the zipper, and then when you stitch it down, I like to see a little piece of the handmade element, so I chose something that you could see the basic running stitch connected right here, ending right here, and I'm gonna leave this loose just so it flows a little bit freely, and then I'll just stitch along the other side. So now at this point, when you have the lining sewn to the zipper of the main skirt, you can very gently turn it right side out and try it on and see if this fits you. If it's slightly too big, you can adjust the basting to be a little bit tighter, or if it's too small, you can put a couple little snips in the basting and give it a little bit more wiggle room. But if it fits just right, then we'll move on to the next step, which is adding the waistband. Now when you're ready to attach the waistband, what you're gonna do is open up the zipper, and you have this waistband that you ironed, and you're just gonna open that up, and this point right here is going to come right to the edge right here where the zipper stop is, but just on above it, kind of where the basting stitch is. So you're just gonna match that up right there and pin it into place. Then you're just going to go around the waist and pin it to the waistband, both the lining and the skirt. Now when you get this all completely pinned all the way around, you're gonna have this leftover of the waistband. Just stitch all the way until you get to the edge, and then just leave it alone. When we fold this over, this is gonna be the flap that goes on the other side, and we're gonna have hooks underneath of this. And this part is adjustable, so if you don't like how long that is, you can always just cut some of it off, but we'll deal with that when we get there. So just go ahead and do a regular stitch a 1/2 inch away from the edge. So now when you have the waistband completely attached, then you're just gonna close up this end, the extra flap. So I decided I wanted mine to be about that long, so I'm going to fold over these bottom edges and stitch all the way across, and I will just snip this extra off and take off a little bit of this corner as well. So now when you flip this back over, you just push that corner out and there's this really nice little flap, and this bottom is gonna get stitched. So now what you're gonna do is you can see that the waistband is gonna come over. Now you have the basting stitch in both of the layers. I took my basting stitch out of my main fabric, but I left it in my lining just for extra reinforcement, and you're not gonna be able to see it from the front side. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna bring all of this over like this, and you're gonna take it to the ironing board and press everything over to where you get this nice crisp fold in the top. You're gonna hand stitch this part together, and then you're just gonna hand stitch this fold right onto the seam line right here. All of this seam allowance you can stitch into, but don't stitch down right through here, because then you'll see your stitches right on this side. Then when you get to the other side, this side doesn't have the extra flap. So what's gonna happen is you're just going to fold this section over. So this is going to be folded right here, and you'll just fold that section over. You'll stitch across, and once you get to this opening, you'll hand stitch this closed, and your zipper stop is just right here. So now I have the waistband all hand stitched along the inside, and then I have zipped this up and matched up these 2 points and added a closure. Now that we've completed the waistband, everything is finished on the top, and now we've just got the bottom to finish. Because parts of this are going to be hanging on the bias, this has a little bit of stretch to it, whereas this is on the grain and it doesn't stretch at all. So what we've got to do is we've got to hang this for a day or two to see how the weight of the fabric pulls in certain parts of the skirt. So I've left this hanging for quite a few days, and you can see that there's just a very subtle difference between the front and the side, but I have more of an exaggerated difference from the center back to the side. And the back is going to be the shortest part, not only because you have the back side to come around and this kind of lifts up higher, but also the stitching in the center back shortens the skirt up just a bit. So after this has hung, you're going to find the shortest point of the skirt, which will be my center back, and I'm going to trim the skirt to be all one length. There's a few different ways you can do this, and if you don't have a dress form, you can do this on a hanger, and it will be pretty accurate. This will be the most accurate way to do it. You could even have somebody assist you with you wearing it as well. And the way that I keep track of this is you can either cut the skirt according to a line on your dress form, or you can get a little piece of tape and mark the height on, a wall or a piece of furniture. And so let's say we wanted it to be this long, then we would just come with our skirt as close as we can and just trim and slowly turn this, keeping the trimming at the bottom of the tape. And so this would be your guide. And then another way is you could use a measuring tape and just hold this at the base of the waistband and cut a consistent length, just going around as you're cutting. It's really up to you how you feel most comfortable achieving that equal length. For my skirt, I'm just going to be using this bottom bar as a guide because it's actually right where the back of my skirt is. So now you can step back and look at it and make sure it all looks even to you. And then you're going to do the same thing to the lining, because this will have behaved in the same way. So you can just take up the skirt and do the same thing again. Okay, so now that I have everything evened out and how I want it, I'm going to take this over to my machine and do a small rolled hem. So I'll begin by hemming the lining. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do just a very small rolled hem. So you're going to turn towards the wrong side and just having a small, maybe 1/4 of an inch fold, and then you're going to stitch right along the very, very edge. And do that completely around the skirt. So it will look like this. You'll stitch right along the crease, and then you'll go around with scissors like this and just cut off that excess. And then you'll go to your machine and you'll fold it over one time, and you're going to stitch down right along the edge again. Then when you're finished sewing, from the right side it looks like this, and on the wrong side it looks like this. So I'm doing the same method for the hem of the main skirt, but I want it to be a little bit thicker, and so I did a basting stitch about 1/8 of an inch away, and then I'm not going to trim this excess off. I'm going to use this as a little bit of stability. Because we're working with a curved hem, I'm going to turn just directly over like this, and I'm going to pin this one. That way we don't have any weird ruffles as we go along. So every few inches I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it directly over, and what's going to happen is you'll have kind of this excess. You can take this to the iron and press it down to where it's smooth. It's the same technique, but just a little bit wider. And this part has already been done right here. And this is what it looks like. Whew. Okay, so that was a lot of work. You did the hem, it's finished now. This is the best part. You get to enjoy your skirt. So do a quick change and be on your way. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe and the little bell alert if you want to be notified anytime that I post a video. Now it's your turn to go get creative and make a skirt that you love. Bye everyone.